Okay, so let's jump in here. We're going to work on the legend now. So first, before you start with your legend, you want to make sure that all of your layer names and your contents pane are tidied up. So if we go back to the layout that we were working on, and we take a look at our map frame, okay, everything's tidied up there. Let's practice with this for just a minute, though, in one of our other maps. So let's say we went to our demographics map. Oh, I already fixed that one. Let's say we went to our SCC close-up map. You notice that we have, all sorts of messy things on here. So if you were to come in and clean this up, so it's a left click and then another slow left click, I could put a space between state parks, space between county parks, space between city parks. Oftentimes a space is all you need, or you need to get rid of some underscores. Frog XY, we could change that. I'm going to right click, go to properties, just showing you can do this from different places. General, the name Frog XY, you could change it to amphibian locations. All right, and so now you have some things that would look good in the legend. All right, so next step. In your layout, select the legend and choose we've got to add a legend first. So let's go ahead and go back to our Wolfpacks layout. And then we're going to go to the Insert tab and Legend. And these provide like some general how your legend's going to look. But you can modify them, so it doesn't really matter what you pick to start out with. Once you choose that, then you're going to choose a place for the legend. I think I want my legend right here. All right, so now I've got my legend. If your element pane is open, you'll see, and then your legend is highlighted, you'll see it pop up here. Otherwise, you'd right click on the legend and go to properties, and that element pane will pop up. The element pane is where we're going to be formatting each of the different elements that we add to our layout. All right, so here's some options. So we've got two main tabs, they're legend and text symbol. I can go to my text symbol right now and change everything to send empty. And I can make it white. I'm just going to do that real quick for the whole thing so I can see the legend as I'm adjusting it. All right, so I was just able to change all the font in the entire legend by going straight over to text symbol at my beginning. So, okay, so the next thing I want us to note is, so we got those two main tabs, and then we've got 4 sub-tabs here. We've got the options, we've got legend arrangement options, we've got display, and we've got placement. So let's start here under options. This is just whether our legend is visible or not, and then what we call it over here in the contents. So it's called legend by default. You see that? All right, and then here under legend, so that's general. Let's close that up. Under legend, it's the legend for the frame that's called map frame. So sometimes we'll have the opportunity to put a couple of different maps in one layout, and we will create a legend for each of those frames. Right now our map frame is called map frame. If I were to hit its properties and I were to call it something else besides map frame, like Wolfpacks, now when I go back to my legend here, the name of the map frame is called Wolfpacks. Did you see how that changed? Okay, so now it's called Wolfpacks. That's the name for this map frame. Shows up in the contents here, and I'm calling it Wolfpacks here. It shows in the legend. And then your legend can have a title or not, but here is what I will tell you. You should not title your legend. Anybody looking at it knows that that's the legend, so you should either not show the title, or you should give it a different descriptive name besides legend, like something similar to the title of the map, but then that becomes redundant. So, but you could call it something like Wolfpacks 2022. And I just wanted to do that so you could see that that'll change the name from Legend to Wolfpacks. What you don't want to do is never call it Legend. And in fact, a lot of times it doesn't need a title, so I'm not gonna show that because let's see, yeah, I'm not gonna show that because I don't need it. And the layer name is actually called Wolfpacks 2022. So that's that option. Now let's go to Legend items. So for this legend, we really just have one item, and that item is associated with just the one layer we have on the map. So either charts or layers will show up here, these legend items. And so this is for that. Sync fonts when adding items. So if I were to add another layer to this map, if I have this checked, it's going to show up in the font that I've chosen, the 2Sin MT. So I think that's a good one to have checked. Synchronize the map, and that means that the legend will show what we have in the map. So if I turn that layer off in the map, it turns off the legend. Okay. All right, and then yeah, so that's what we needed there. One place that's very useful to go is here in the properties of the legend items. So remember this button. So general, yeah, legend, yeah. This is where legend items, this is where we're going to choose how they're labeled in the legend here. So we can show them by layer name or not. So that's the layer name. I turn that on or off. I can turn the headings on or off. So that's the field name or the attribute, which was pack status. And then the label, the label is the position that attribute takes. So either the category it falls into, either breeding pair, non-breeding pair, or single wolf. Okay. So layer names, yes or no. Headings, yes or no. Label, yes or no. Pretty much you almost always want the label because what do the colors mean otherwise? So I think I like this with Wolfpacks. You know, actually I'm going to get rid of the layer name because I feel like the title does a good enough job, Wolfpacks in Washington 2022, and then we just have information on the status. And I'm going to shrink that a little bit, position it here. All right, it does conflict with a little bit of the Portland behind it, so we might change the font in a minute. Okay, so yeah, so that show properties is really useful. If I go to here, this is if you've got a big legend, the way that items show in it, you might need to adjust them, okay? And so that's what's going on there. So you'll either adjust the size of the fonts, or you'll adjust the number of columns, or you'll adjust the columns and the font size, or you'll make columns manually. So that's something that you'll finesse in there. And really, you're going to learn by experimenting, but you just need to know where that's at. Your minimum font size, 6 point, that's okay. You might want to make it 8 point, just because you don't really want it to get that small. And in fact, I might make my legend a little bit bigger. And sometimes adjust columns, I'm just going to say adjust font size. Maybe make this a little bit bigger, see if we can get our font a little bit bigger. So this is where there's definitely some finessing going on. I might just change the size of the font over here in text symbol. And let's see, that's my layer names. I'm gonna, it's already 16 point. Let's go up to 18 point. Okay, I did that. And labels. Can't remember if that's labels or descriptions, but let's. Oh, okay. So that was my labels, and then it must mean, oh, my headings needed to go up too. We'll take that up to 18. Okay. All right. So this is how you kind of go about making this happen. I don't really like that these have wrapped, and so I'm going to come in here, back to here. Word wrapping. It says labels, descriptions at 1.5 inches. I'm gonna undo word wrapping, and so maybe it's labels. Undo word wrapping. There we go. I didn't want to wrap those. I wanted them to just, you know what I mean by wrap, where the text tucks back under itself. And then I want my pack status to be bigger again. So let's see here. I'm going to go to headings and let's make that 20. And apply that. Okay. Might even make pack status bold. Alright, apply that. There, I think that looks a little bit better. Especially because we're competing with some of the labels on the base map, which we might deal with later. Okay, so we just did some, save that, we just did some finessing of your legend. I'm trying to think what else I wanted to show you here. That's really where the action happens. These two tabs are really where the action happens. This adjusts things for your entire legend itself. So if I wanted to give my legend a background or a border, I could conceivably, instead of having you see the map underneath it, I could change it to like just a dark gray background and decide how that looks. That, you know, it becomes a little bit more distracting. It takes you there, but I wonder if I made that a little bit darker so it almost matches the map. Well, now you don't have the competition between the labels for like Portland, and yeah, it is another color of, I wonder if I could take it just one darker. That pretty much looks like it's going to be black. Ooh, that's too black. So it looks like that's our closest option. And it's not exactly the same as the base map, but I don't think it's too distracting. A couple other things you could do over here. You could give it a shadow or just apply a border. I'm not that keen on borders unless you're doing like a very white map, but this is where that would happen. And then over here, you've got some placement options where the legend is placed within the box you've drawn. So that's center, top, bottom, side, upper right. I think upper right feels fine for now. You're not going to see that box when you're not working in it. So yeah. So there we go. And what do we want to say over here? In your layout, select the legend and choose the. I'm not sure what tab did we choose. Click the legend. Choose the legend tab or the options tab here. Okay. Options tab. So set those things, right click on the legend. Oh, and you can, yeah, so that, sorry, I meant here, your layout, select the legend, and it was up here, choose the legend tab. Okay, so it said choose the legend tab up here. And you can also set the font right here, just like we kind of did over here. So there's a couple places you can do that. That's what I meant there. Right click on the legend and choose properties, if your elements pane isn't already open. Properties. Oh goodness. All right, to open the element pane and open items in the element. So I wanted to point out here that that's where your legend is over here. You can lock it once you get it the way you want it to. And I also wanted to point out, remember that important button. So if you're in the element pane under legend, here in the options tab, that show properties is what's going to really allow you to decide what's showing up here and decide kind of what these look like here. And then you can choose each of the pieces here to format. And over here, this next option is how you adjust kind of your fitting strategy and font sizing if you're increasing and decreasing the size of things. All right. So yes, you can move items in the legend by changing their order in the map contents or by changing their order in the legend as it appears in the layout contents. Yes. So when you change the order of layers on your map, those will also change in your legend. And then if you want to change the symbol patches, those are changed in each map. So let me show you what that looks like. So right now we have a standard square symbol patch. If I go in here to the map and I get into the symbology, so I had to do this in the map over here, I can change the shape of these to be like squiggles if I wanted, or circles, or octagons, and that's going to change what it looks like over here and in my legend. I think for this purpose, kind of semicircle is just fine. All right, so that's where that's changed. It's changed in the map. If you want to change the shape of the symbol patch. Right. Symbology pane. Symbology pane. All right. What principles should you keep in mind as you design your layout? Your primary map should be as large as practical. Okay, that's just straight up good advice. Ancillary information, so your 8 essential elements should be small and unobtrusive. So that's information that if your map reader wants to find, they can find it, but it's not the focus of the map. Viewer scan maps top to bottom and left to right. So your important things should show up on the top and on the left. That's because that's the direction we read, right? Let's see, align and evenly aligned. So I showed you how to align. Aligned and evenly distributed elements keep the map tidy. And then lock and group elements in your layout. That can help you prevent frustration by shifting when you shift things and you didn't really want to move them that way. So we're going to discuss map design in more depth in a couple of weeks. A couple things for you to look at or do right now. I've got this old map. I want you to see if you can find the 8 essential elements in this layout. Are they all there? So see if you can identify those. And then, I was going to tell you how to print a layout. So give me just a second and we'll do that too. All right. So briefly, let's talk about how to print our layout. And I think we can just keep this in the same short video. So you're going to use the Share tab. And you're going to export your layout as a flattened PDF. If you're going to print it, email it, or turn it in on Canvas. And what this means is it's just going to minimize the size of the file, and it'll have the functions where I can look at it and appreciate it, and you can print it, you can see it, someone can review it. You can send it to someone by email and they can look at it and appreciate the information that you're sharing. You're going to export it as a geo-referenced PDF. That's down here. I'll show you in the software in a second. We'll go ahead and output our map. If you're going to use it to navigate in Avenza. There may be other navigation apps that you can also use geo-referenced PDFs in. But I know in Avenza, basically what it means, and if you haven't worked in GPS class with Matt yet, you will soon enough. And basically with a geo-referenced PDF, you pull it into this application on your phone or a tablet, and it'll put a little dot, because it's geo-referenced, it'll put a little dot right where you are. Your phone will talk to the satellites, and then you'll put a little dot, kind of like when you're working in Google Maps, or if you're using maps for navigation. And so a geo-referenced PDF is what you need for that. It's going to be a little bit bigger file, so I don't really need it if I'm just looking at it on Canvas. But if you're going to use the map in Avenza, if you're going to use it for navigation, you should save it as a geo-referenced PDF. If you're going to place your layout into a document, like you're making a report and you're putting a map in, you're going to export it as either a TIFF or a JPEG. It kind of just depends on how you're working with your files, but either of those should work. If you're going to put your map into a document, paste it in there. In general, your layout's going to print faster from a PDF, and that's because a PDF is actually, it's a printable document file. It's meant for printing. You can print straight from You can print straight from Pro though. So if I go here and I go to my Share tab, here's my export options, and I'm going to choose Flatten PDF for this one. We'll do that in just a second, but you can actually print the layout, and you'll have options here for printing, and you have to make sure you line up the paper with the orientation of your map there. So mine is landscape, and you can mess with the print properties there. But for our purposes, and especially because you're going to want to save a PDF as part of a portfolio of the maps you make that you're proud of, we're going to hit Export Layout. I'm going to close the print one. We're going to export it as a PDF, okay? And it's going to save to the default that I set up for the project. So, oh no, it's going to save to the last place you printed. And last place I was doing something else. So I'm going to want to navigate to the folder I want to save it to. And I've got my project folders, that's a great option. I can just put it in my Section 3 demo project folder. It's going to take on the name of the layout. So this layout's called Wolfpacks. So it's going to be called Wolfpacks PDF. If you like that, that's fine. Leave it that way if you don't change it. And then I'm not going to clip it to the extent of graphics because this is a little bit bigger. I wanted a margin. You don't need to worry about these things here. The defaults work fine for what we're doing. The resolution is fine for what we're doing. And then this is where we choose if we're going to have the georeference information or not. If we haven't already just chosen it from one of these default presets, okay? So if you just click on this button and you open the export, you're going to have to choose. This will just be a flattened PDF, and then PDF layers, and then I can go ahead and export it. There we go. And if I want to, it's kind of convenient. I can just check to make sure the export worked well. Bam. All right. So I can see my completed PDF there. How nice is that? And I could also go into the folder where I saved it, right? Which it was like demonstration. Yeah. Then you have to remember where you put it, right? But it was in my demonstration folder for this one. So you could go in there and then you could actually take a look. But you can also do the quick open. And then for you guys, let's see. So that's what I was going to say. So now you've got some terms that you should be comfortable with. So you make sure you're comfortable with those, with the vocabulary from this unit. And then your task is to use the Share tab to export a PDF of one of the layouts you created during the demonstration. We kind of just did one layout together. So go ahead and share that with me. I'm excited to see you kind of how you put your layout together. Maybe you just chose the same defaults I did. If that's the case, that's just fine. Or maybe you changed some things up, and I'd love to see that. And then if you want to check yourself to see if this stuff is really sticking, go ahead and create another complete layout using one of the maps that we populated during these demonstrations. So we've got a few other maps. Go ahead and use those and see what you get. And then some more resources. Esri has about an hour-and-a-half course on creating a map layout. And there's also this is like a 10 or 12 minute video on creating a layout. So if you want a little bit more, you want to look at it in some different ways, go here. All right, so Section 5, good job, guys.